What's up YouTube? Trent here with Visual Torch, where we teach you how to keep yourself safe and secure from cyber threats. In our last video, we discussed the importance of creating a security program. And as promised, we'll be going in depth in all the steps on how to create one. If you need a link to the video, it should be appearing somewhere up here. I'm really excited to be getting into this new series with you all. I'm hoping to provide some clarity and some insight on how you can secure your business. So for today's topic, we're going to be discussing the first step, which is conducting a security risk assessment. So let's get to it. Before we get into how to conduct a security risk assessment, why don't we get a better understanding on what it is? A security risk assessment is a point-in-time review of your organization's security posture to identify any risk in the company itself, technologies, or processes. It also allows you to take a look at your security controls and understand how effective they are at protecting against threats. You're going to see security risk assessments mostly in the area of compliance. This will be things like HIPAA, PCI DSS for the payment credit card industry, and various other auditing organizations. When you conduct a security risk assessment, you're going to be identifying any weaknesses in your organization before an attacker can. And then you can take those weaknesses and you can rank the risk of those based on severity. When you conduct a security risk assessment, you're going to see some benefits. You're going to be able to identify all of your valuable IT assets. You're going to see any threats that are facing those assets. You will be able to maintain and meet any compliance or regulatory requirements. You're going to drive decision makings on how your security should be done, and customers are going to be satisfied and happy that you're taking this serious approach. So, we went over what a security risk assessment is, its importance, and some of the benefits to doing one. So now we're going to get into how to conduct a security risk assessment. The first thing you want to do is you're going to want to identify all your IT assets. And that includes mapping things out from servers to laptops. You can throw data in there, even applications. And then what you're going to do is you're going to determine how important each one of these assets are to you. That can be from how you use them day to day or any monetary value that's associated with them. After that, you're going to identify any threats or vulnerabilities to or in these assets. So a threat is anything that can actually harm your asset, whether it be malware, a malicious outsider, or just an unsuspecting, unknowing employee just doing something. And a vulnerability is any weakness that is in the asset itself. And to find a vulnerability, you can use things like a vulnerability scanner. You can do a penetration test where people actually find the vulnerabilities and see if they can exploit them. You can do what's called security gap analysis, where you take your current security posture and you map it up against a security standard that you're following and see where you're lacking at. After you determine your threats and your vulnerabilities, you're going to determine the likelihood and the impact that these things can happen. So with the likelihood, it's just the possibility, or the probability rather, that this incident can happen. And a impact is just how severe it is when the incident happens.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Now that you've identified the threats and vulnerabilities in each asset, you're going to determine what's called likelihood and impact. Likelihood is just the probability that a threat actor can exploit a vulnerability in an asset, and impact is the degree of harm that can be caused by incident to the asset. Now, both of these can be viewed what's called either qualitatively or quantitatively. In a qualitative approach, you're going to use descriptive languages. This is where you'll see things like low, medium, high, very high. Those are going to be used, and your organization has to come to a consensus of what descriptive language you want to use. In a quantitative approach, however, you're going to see numerical values used. And this is where we go over something called the annualized loss expectancy. And what that is, it's a math equation, but don't worry, it's not too rough. It's a little bit of jargon in there, but it's just multiplication. So in an annualized loss expectancy, you're gonna think of throughout the year of all the incidents that could happen, how much do I expect to lose in monetary value? So all that is first is taking the annualized rate of occurrence, which is also wrote as ARO, and that's the number of times that an incident can occur. So in this case, if you have, let's say, a data center that's in the Midwest and is subject to tornadoes, and you say, well, how many tornadoes do I have a year? And it's like, okay, on average, we have about 7. So your annualized rate of occurrence will be 7. You're gonna take that and you're gonna multiply it by what's called the single loss expectancy. So what that is during one event, how much will you lose? And that's also multiplication. You're going to take what's called the asset value, which can be either how much the asset costs, it can be repair costs, or even replacement costs. You're gonna multiply by what's called an exposure factor. And that's just basically when an incident happens, what's the percentage of that asset that I lose? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? So I'm gonna multiply that with the asset value, and that will give you your single loss expectancy. And you're gonna take that and you're then gonna multiply by the annualized rate of occurrence. And that's how you get that monetary value, how much you expect. Next, you're gonna take the threats and the vulnerabilities, and you're going to determine the risk associated with each one of those. Now, to determine risk, you're going to have to do a little bit more math, but don't worry, it's fine. Risk is just defined as the likelihood times the impact. So to come up with the actual numbers, you're going to use what's called a risk matrix. I'm gonna throw up a 5x5 matrix right here, and you can see that those descriptive elements we talked about before, this organization used, and they numbered the lowest from 1 and the highest through 5. And they assigned those to both likelihood and to impact. And then they just said, hey, the impact may be 2, the likelihood will be 5, now it is 10 for our risk level. And then they took the ranges of 1 through 25 and they gave more descriptive elements to it to say either it's acceptable, tolerable, unacceptable, things like that. Now, after you have these risks, you're going to create what's called a risk response. And there's 4 ways to do that. A risk response can either be saying that you will mitigate the risk, which means that you're putting security controls in place to actually lower either the likelihood or the impact so that the risk is now at a more acceptable level. Next, you can transfer the risk, where you basically say, I accept part of the risk, but the rest of the risk is being transferred over to a third party. And we see this when it comes to like insurance claims. So our insurance policies per se. So insurance policy will be in place where the organization will handle part of the risk, but let's say they can't handle the monetary aspect. So they can't afford to pay it out. So the actual insurance company will be able to pay. The next thing you can do is you can accept the risk. So you can say, hey, we've done all we can to bring it down as far as we can, but there's a little bit of risk that's left over, and that residual amount, we're okay with that. And the last thing you can say is you can say you can completely avoid the risk. So to avoid a risk means that the activity that's causing this risk is way too high for you to participate in and you just want out. So once you got all this together, you're gonna actually document your risk, and you'll create a document called a risk register, and that can be in Excel, wherever you want. And you're gonna just notate things like when you discovered the risk, the risk owner, you can put likelihood and impact in there. You can put a description, a lot of things you can put in there, but you're just going to document it to make sure that this risk is being tracked. And the last thing you're going to do is you're actually going to do a continuous evaluation. So when it comes to a risk assessment, you're going to want to do this annually. And that's just because compliance and regulatory regulations is going to want you to do it this way. Now, I know we covered a lot and it can seem daunting, and you probably don't know how you're going to be able to conduct a security risk assessment. But don't worry, we here at Visual Torch are able to help assist you and guide you through the process. If you're interested, I've linked our website down below in the description, so just go ahead and fill out a contact form and we can get in touch. That's all we have for our video, and if you like the content and you want to stay up to date for all the things that we're doing at Visual Torch, please do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thank you. Have a great day.